Welcome to Still Evolving, where we explore the truth behind lasting performance and resilience. Rather than relying on perfection or superhuman ability, our conversation will highlight how real strength emerges through simple, intentional habits grounded in self-compassion, adaptability, and the ability to grow through life's inevitable setbacks. Today's guest is Jennifer Johns. Jennifer is Vice President of Strategic Partnerships at Elevate, a division of SmithGeiger Group where she helps brands use consumer insights to make confident, high-impact marketing decisions. Drawing from her experience as a former business operator, Jennifer works directly with leadership teams to design research that answers the questions companies need to solve for growth. She partners with organizations across industries, including home services, legal, and retail, helping them better understand how consumers evaluate brands, what influences purchasing decisions, and where marketing investments create the greatest return. Jennifer is known for translating research insights into clear, strategic direction that helps leaders move forward with clarity and confidence. Please welcome Jennifer to Still Evolving. Jennifer, welcome to Still Evolving. Grateful to have you on, and I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
Thanks so much for having me, Amy. It's great to be here with you.
Awesome. Why don't we start just with sharing with our audience a bit about your background? So if you could share on your journey, maybe where you've come from and what you're working on now.
Sure. Well, my journey is long because I've been around the block a time or two by this point. But I started off very early in my career as a new business development salesperson in the media world specifically. I went to work for Time Warner, where I represented a handful of very big networks, many of which you all are, I'm sure, very familiar with, like CNN. And I did that for quite a while. I entered that space sort of in happenstance. It was right after college, and they took a chance on me. They sort of had to. I had an in, let's just put it that way. And unfortunately, or fortunately, they came to me and said, just so that you know, you're pretty green and we weren't really planning on hiring you, but we sort of had to. So can you imagine, as a young person straight out of college, this is your first real job, being met with that? Some people might, I don't know, duck and hide or run in the opposite direction, but I took it as a challenge and I said, I'll show them. So long story short, I hung out there at Time Warner for about 10 years. I ended up becoming the number 2 seller for the company. And then I decided it was time to move on. So I moved on from working for Time Warner to working for a broadcast television station where I head up sales and operations for their 10 Western stations. And I don't know, I got a little tired, you know? 13 years in, thinking, is there anything else out there for me? And so what do? I go and do a 180. I did a complete pivot and entered a new industry. I ended up moving into the beauty business. I ended up going to work for specifically a wellness brand. And I ended up staying there for a little over 11 years. And I loved my time. When I got offered the opportunity, I kind of looked at them and said, are you crazy? I don't know anything about your world, but I quickly learned and I really enjoyed the space. But there's a theme and maybe you're seeing it starting to develop. At some point, I decided it was time to make another pivot and I did another 180. And I'm now working for a company called Elevate Marketing Research. We're a division of the SmithGeiger Group, and we do research for industries and help businesses understand their consumers so that they can best engage with them, understanding what they want and what they need, how to optimize that connection. So anyways, lots of pivots in my journey. And within each of those, I've moved through different phases of being a sales development individual to being a player coach to being a manager. And so I've sat sort of in all of those seats, and I've been on a wild ride in a variety of different industries. But I will say, where I am today, the thing that is sort of the common thread of each of those experiences is that I've always been very leaned into the evidence, the research. I never wanna make a decision. Maybe it's because I'm a cautious individual without first knowing what I'm potentially getting into. So, I'm really excited to be where I am today because I'm able to bring in a lot of my experience from other roles, but I'm really excited to be working in that place where I'm doing something I'm passionate about, and that's in uncovering different sentiments and behaviors and getting questions answered that people have so that they can optimize and operate their businesses more efficiently.
Wow, so exciting, and I'm so curious, like, to hear more about you talked about the early challenge, and I love how you framed that because you're right. Fresh out of college, hearing someone say something, that they had to hire you rather than they wanted to, that it could be very off-putting, to say the lightly.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing also through all of those kind of chapters in your evolution, it was also probably you ran against some other challenges, stress, adversity, change. I'm curious now as a leader, what you take with you from those experiences. Maybe as yourself, like met with a personal or professional challenge and adversity, or perhaps maybe along the way, what you observed in other leaders. Those lessons learned that now impact how you show up in your moments that matter. So, can you talk a little bit about those takeaways?
Yeah, there's so much to unpack there, honestly. But it's interesting. I was at a yoga class this morning before being here, and it's something that I'm newer to my practice in that I picked up in the last couple of years, but I really love it because it not only challenges my body, but it also challenges my mind. And the teacher this morning opened up our class with something that I mean, it really resonated with me, and it's something that when I reflect on my life, I think I've done a very good job at. And in those moments of challenge, going back and looking and saying, "I am enough," first,
Mm,
right? "I am enough." That is so important. And then saying, "I'm strong. Why not me? I'm strong,
mhm,
and
mhm,
I'm confident. I just have to portray that. But I'm also human. I'm also human, and I'll make mistakes. And when I need help, I will ask for it." And I think that that is, I mean, as I sit here today, like that's still so powerful. It is so powerful. And it's a great reminder to have that positive self-talk, to be
mhm,
able to look at
mhm,
yourself and say, "I'm enough." And
mhm,
if I need help, I can ask for it. Right? And as long as I think we as individuals are willing to ask for that help when we need it, I think people are willing to give it. And
mhm,
so for
mhm,
me, in my career and in my life, right? Even outside of work, that is something that I try very hard to do. It doesn't always work, I'm just being honest, right? I am
right.
human. I am human,
Yeah.
but I try. I try to say, I am enough and I need help. And so that's the way that I've sort of gotten through some of the challenges that I faced. And I try to encourage the people that I work with to do the same.
Mhm,
'Cause
mhm,
nothing is worse than getting to the end of the road with somebody who's really struggling and them not having had that conversation with you. And so it's too late.
right.
So,
Yeah.
and how do we nurture that as leaders? We have to lead by example. We
Mhm,
have to
mhm.
say, I made a mistake or I didn't do that right. And so I think that when we set that example, then others will follow. And to me, that's a mark of success.
I love that, hearing more about what we say to ourselves and how it impacts our ability to take that courageous action, right? I talk a lot about how we can show up in our moments that matter. And we can use tools to maintain composure, to have clarity and refocus on what matters, to connect with those around us. But that last C, that taking courageous action,
Mm,
really is strongly impacted by what are we saying to ourselves about this moment. And like you
yeah.
said, there's sometimes where if that inner dialogue perhaps adds extra weight and meaning of risk, perhaps compromises like who we are,
Yeah.
we can miss out. And like I heard you say, like the conversation comes too late. Like really, we missed out on that moment that mattered to be able to show up in the way that really
Yeah.
makes that impact.
Yeah.
So, a
Well,
lot of times that inner coach, like what we say to ourselves, I talk with people all the time, like coaches get trained up, like
yeah,
all the time. Or coaches seek
they
professional
should be.
development. Right, they should be. I haven't met one professional coach who hasn't like you mentioned, ask for help themselves so that they can help the people that they're supporting and challenging and growing. So I really appreciate you started with yoga. Like how did that inner dialogue shape for you? Like what else besides yoga helped you find that inner coach and train it up to be more effective?
Therapy,
Okay.
a lot of
Having
therapy.
a
Yeah.
lot having somebody else to be able to
Yeah.
reflect
Yeah,
and challenge and
absolutely. In
yeah.
fact, I was just talking to my therapist about this yesterday. I see her once a week when I'm not traveling for work. We were talking about, why do some people resist coming to therapy?
Mhm.
And I mean, obviously there's a lot there. There are a lot of answers to that. But
Right.
what's so cool about it is that it's such a great place to be able to go and just like unleash, right? To be able
Mhm.
to dump everything. You're not having to dump it on your spouse or your partner. You're not having to dump it on your kids or your coworkers. Like, here's a safe place, just you can let it all go and maybe sort a few things out or maybe not. But it's just a
Right.
great place to be able to have that release. And so
Mhm.
for me, the yoga practice
Yeah.
and being diligent with going to therapy and having a conversation with somebody who can be objective and just listen to me has been really helpful. It's been really helpful.
And it sounds like it also just reiterates or reinforces that inner dialogue when I hear you say like I am enough, right? Like yes, we can say that. Sometimes the noise in our environment counters that very strongly.
Of
And
course.
so it is a great space to be able to not only get out and like vent and kind of
Yeah.
unload, but also really help you refine that inner dialogue and what you're saying to yourself and reinforcing a message that is going to be more helpful for you,
What
going
gets in our
forward.
way, or what gets in my way, a lot of the times is fear, right? Making the wrong decision because
Mhm.
I'm a type A, I'm a perfectionist. I want to make sure that I'm the best. I'm doing everything in the right way. I'm checking all
Yeah.
the boxes, and if I do, A, B, and C, I'm going to get it right. But sometimes we don't know what A, B, and C is, right? There are
Right.
things that take place. For
Yeah.
example, when I was making one of my career pivots away from
Mhm.
television into the beauty world,
Mhm.
I was lucky enough, and I encourage anybody listening to this podcast, if you don't have a mentor, get one, find
Mhm.
one, just ask somebody. They'll be flattered. But I had a great mentor, and he was also at that time my boss. And I was fearful of making that change. I going to
Mhm.
leave the 13 years of connections and knowledge and expertise that I had built.
Mhm.
And it was scary. It was really, really
Yeah.
scary. But I think that one of the things that I've learned is that when we face fears, if we can ask ourselves, what's the worst thing that could happen? What's the
Mhm.
worst thing that will happen potentially if it doesn't work out? And then, okay, if that does happen, that worst thing, what are the next steps? What are the next
Mhm.
steps to do? And that was something I learned from him.
Hmm.
And he said to me, look, you're hungry for a change. You're burnt out. This seems like a great opportunity for you. If it doesn't work, call me up. Right. So that was the next action. I had a
Right.
fallback plan. So, I just think that as we think about taking chances in our careers, taking chances in our lives, we really need to look at what's holding us back. And oftentimes it's fear of the unknown, fear of failure. But if we can find ways to say, okay, and what happens, then we realize maybe it'll be okay. Maybe I should take that chance.
Yeah. I mean, I love just kind of pausing a bit, knowing that you can handle it, right? Like there is a plan. Worst case scenario happens. Yes, there's risk in everything that we do. Actually, there's risk in not changing too, right? Like that's also a helpful reminder. And so with that risk, you know, you're confident. Will you be uncomfortable should that risk play out? Yeah, you will. Like, and you can find a way. And so if you have that mentality that you can find a way, and it sounds like he was offering that reassurance that there's people that have your back and that can help you navigate should that risk occur. And yet what's so interesting is like you mentioned the experience of fear. Like the Olympics are on right now. Last night we watched these aerials and I'm amazed these skiers kind of flying down a ramp and then twisting midair and
Yeah.
amazingly
Yeah.
like land, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so I think about that. Like, is there a risk with whatever change you were going through? Absolutely. And somehow his approach led you to recognize like this is a challenge and not a threat, right? Threat, like our anxiety system spikes up, wants to keep you, protect you, keep you alive, and is going to more than likely help you pause to not pursue this
Yeah.
opportunity. Seeing something as a challenge, you've got a plan, you know the skill you're executing, you're going to go execute it. And is it certain? No, you're going to fly down that ramp, you're going to twist, and yeah, you may fall, but you've got people around you who can kind of help you get back up and keep going. So
Right.
really appreciate the power that comes from the connections we have, and mentors huge. You've mentioned mentors or therapists, like really the theme comes from it's the resilience is really fueled by those connections we make with other people, and it
Oh,
can
yeah.
take many forms,
Oh, yeah.
coaches, mentors, therapists, absolutely.
Yep.
I'm curious, you mentioned yoga in the beginning, but this is a grind. And certainly in your journey, our tanks can get low. It's like, wow. And that's just professionally, right? I don't know of all the other roles you may have. You have other relationships with your family. How do you recharge? How do you refuel along the way? What's the role of recovery in your journey?
Yeah, for me, it's a ritual, it's a daily walk. It's
Okay.
stepping away from screens, stepping away from my phone, hopefully. I typically do bring
Yeah.
it because I like to track my steps. It's a walk. And I live in the most beautiful place in Southern California, in my opinion. We've got access to the foothills here and the great outdoors. And
Hmm.
just getting out with nature, climbing the hills and breathing and, seeing a deer every now and then or even a coyote along the way, right? And
Hmm.
having that time for myself to be able to
Yeah.
reset, listen to maybe some good music, listen to, the birds, listen to the stream if it's running, which right now it is because we've been getting so much rain. But that's the way I
Mhm.
reset is getting
Yeah.
outdoors.
Yeah. That connection with nature, I mean, the research is so strong. And how if we can just get outside and then also move, right? Like the power that comes just with that physical activity. So many of us, I mean, myself included, believe me, are at this desk, way too many hours sitting. And so that movement, how much that can recharge us. I would love to say we're all in positions where we could take 2-week vacations every other month, but it's really when I talk about recovery and what I want to reinforce for our guests is an audience is it's often in micro doses. It's the micro
Yeah.
doses that can kind of get us through the week, right?
Well, and I
Of
will say as
course,
leaders, we can
huh?
encourage that, right? So some
Mm-hmm.
of the ways that we do that at my company are we do walk and talks. So we'll say, all right, this is going to be a meeting on the phone. Everybody get your tennis
Uh-huh.
shoes on. We're going outside.
Uh-huh.
We have what we call First Friday. Every first Friday of the month, we have our team meeting. We typically will bring in somebody, some sort of wellness expert, whether that's going to be somebody who's going to lead a meditation or somebody that's going to teach us, a clean cooking skill. And then come, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, we unplug and we're, away from screens for the rest of the day. So here are ways in which, as a leader, we're trying to
Uh-huh.
encourage healthy habits and the ability
Uh-huh.
to, find balance to a certain degree.
Yeah.
So I think that that's really
Or to
important.
bolster that underlying foundation, right? Like you cannot perform if you're not well.
That's
That's what it
right.
comes down to.
That's
So,
right.
any other immediate actionable tool, tip, or strategy that you use in your daily or weekly routine? I love the walking. I reinforce that everywhere. Actually, I was even saying to my partner today, I was like, "Hey, let's go for a walk after dinner." Like, just I've been sitting a lot
Yeah.
lately. I was like, we
Yeah.
got to get up and move. But anything else that you want to leave or share with our audience before we wrap up? Something immediate and actionable that they can use to optimize and sustain their high performance.
I would just say to not forget to be authentic to yourself. It's so easy for all of us to try and perform to somebody else's expectations and standards. And for so long, I was known as the Gumby. They literally called me that. Consultant called me that at one of the companies that I work for. And while that could be very flattering, right? Because, oh, it means I can
Mm-hmm.
flex. It also means that I might not be being very true to myself.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so I would encourage you to, again, like look within. How do I feel about this? What does this mean for me? And to be able to find ways to lean into your truth and
Mm-hmm.
to share your vision, your opinion, because I think that when we do that, number one, it's really respected. but
Yeah.
we do some of our best work when we in fact lead with that level of just authenticity itself.
Great reminder. Jennifer, thank you so much for this conversation. It's
You.
been wonderful. I hope
What a
we can
great
have
way to
many
start my
more.
day.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So thank you again.